Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all the participants. So today we will discuss about an update on the breast cancer 2021. This is for advanced breast cancer. We cannot cover the breast cancer treatment and all its incidents and other biological parameters in a single meeting. So we will see only ABC of this meeting today. Only 3 topics we will discuss, and then we will have only the panel discussion, one panel discussion. So we will first have first speaker, we will have Dr. Shiv Shankar. Dr. Shiv Shankar is the consultant in the Department of Medical Oncology at Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Institute. We will have a second speaker, Dr. Jyoti Wadhwa, who is a director in the Medanta Institute of Medical Oncology. Then we'll have third speaker, Dr. Samit Khatri, who is a director at the Shanti Mukund Hospital. And then we will follow with that small discussion on that breast cancer. This will be panel discussion moderated by Dr. Sumit Goyal, who is senior consultant at Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Hospital. So we know that metastatic breast cancer is usually not a curable disease. Earlierly, we used to have used chemotherapy to control the disease and to prolong the survival. So the main aim of the metastatic advanced breast cancer is to prolong the survival with maintenance of that quality of life. Although metastatic breast cancer is unlikely to be cured, there have been meaningful improvements in the survival due to the availability of the more effective systemic treatment, including the endocrine treatments and other targeted therapy which target that CDK4 inhibitors, which target PIK3 mutations and mTOR inhibitors. So these are the 3 targeted agents which, along with endocrine treatment, they have a very meaningful survival, and this is survival is almost equivalent to the chemotherapeutic agents. So we generally treat the patients with metastatic advanced hormone positive breast cancer with the endocrine treatment and systemic therapy as compared to the chemotherapy to avoid the toxicity related to the chemotherapy. Thank you very much. And we start with our first lecture, which will be delivered by Dr. Shiv Shankar, and this will be the current treatment paradigm in the HER2 positive advanced breast cancer. Dr. Shiv Shankar, please.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. I'll share my slides. I think my slides are visible and I am audible, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Today we'll be discussing about the current treatment paradigm in HER2 positive metastatic breast cancer. Basically, we'll be touching upon, since I have got only 10 minutes to deliver this talk, and we all know that many things have happened in last decade in HER2 metastatic breast cancer. To talk in detail about each and every trial, it will take a symposium itself on HER2 metastatic breast cancer. So I'll briefly touch upon these things. What are the first line standard of care? Then what are the newer options, newer TK options and antibody drug conjugates? And what are the future directions? So currently in 2021, we have 8 FDA approved HER2 targeted agents to treat this subset of HER2 positive metastatic breast cancer. So we all know that the Cleopatra has made the that THP, that is pertuzumab, trastuzumab, and taxane-based regimen a standard of care first-line therapy in metastatic HER2 breast cancer patients. Recently, in 2020, in Lancet Oncology, the end of study results were published. We all know that previously in metastatic among the breast cancer patients, HER2 positivity portended a very poor prognosis. However, with the availability of targeted therapy, this has rather reversed. Now we are talking median OS in terms of 5 months, and at 8 years, the survival rates that if we treat 3 patients, one will be surviving at 8 years. This is one of the greatest success story among targeted therapies in the solid oncology. And also, if you look at the PFS at 8 years, around 1 in 6 patients, that is 16% of the patients are remained progression-free at 8 years. So this is definitely a success story, and so it is nowadays a standard of care to treat metastatic breast cancer patients with pertuzumab, trastuzumab, and docetaxel. If we it need not be chemotherapy always docetaxel, we can replace with other taxane like paclitaxel too. So if once patients progresses on first line therapy, that is this triplet combination, or if the patient has received a trastuzumab based therapy in adjuvant setting and they progress within 6 months, so they are considered not a candidates for this THP regimens. In such patients, what are the next best options? That was looked at Emilia trial, in which TDM1 was compared against capecitabine plus lapatinib. As we look at the Kaplan-Meier curves, definitely TDM1 improved the survival outcomes, and not only progression-free survival, and there was also improvement in the overall survival. So definitely this antibody drug conjugate TDM1 is a next best, the best option in the second line therapy. The newer things that has happened recently are TKS. Particularly what we had previously is lapatinib. However, recently we have a very specific HER2/neu specific TKA, that is tucatinib. The older TKA, that is lapatinib, was non-specific, so it has a lot of off-target toxicity. With the advent of this specific TKA, probably will be treating with a lesser toxicities. So this was evaluated in a HER2CLIMB trial. One of the specific points about this registration trial, HER2CLIMB trial, is that only few trials actually include active brain metastasis. This is a one trial, even though if they had a brain progression as a brain site, even those patients were included in this study. Very rarely we come across a trial wherein active brain mets were included. So in the trial, they are randomized between tucatinib, trastuzumab, capecitabine versus trastuzumab, capecitabine. And if you look at the outcomes, as expected, PFS did improve from 5.6 to 7.8 months with 46% relative reduction in the PFS. And even in the OS, there was around 4 months absolute benefit in the overall survival. And also, if you look at the patients among who had a brain metastasis, even among them, there was 52% reduction in progression or death. That is, PFS improved from 5.4 to 7.6 months. This is the first time in a trial basis, it has shown that in active brain metastasis, a drug was shown to be effective. In the HER2CLIMB trial, when they looked at whether does hormone receptor status positivity affect, irrespective of hormone receptor status, they derived benefit. However, among hormone receptor negative, the magnitude of benefit was much more larger. That is, PFS was 4.2 versus 8.1 months in hormone negative, and also the OS was from 14 months to 31.1 months versus among hormone receptor positive, that is 18.2 versus 21.7 months. So as we expected, this is a very specific HER2/neu TKA, so we should expect a lesser side effects. So there was minimal increase in toxicity when it was added to capecitabine background. The majority of the toxicities, most common toxicities, were diarrhea, as expected with capecitabine and any HER2/neu TKA. And apart from that, there was a transaminitis. The incidence of transaminitis were much more common by addition of tucatinib to the capecitabine backbone. Otherwise, they are usually manageable. So apart from the tucatinib, the another TKA, newer TKA is neratinib. Compared to tucatinib, it is a pan HER2/neu group of inhibitor, and also it is an irreversible inhibitor. So in this NALA trial, they looked at how does neratinib do against lapatinib. Neratinib plus cap versus lapatinib plus cap. Here, again, the patients should have at least received 2 lines of prior therapy. Prior or 2 directed therapy. and if asymptomatic stable brain metastasis were allowed. However, in R2 CLIMB, even if there were a progressive brain metastasis, even they were included, whereas here only if there are stable brain metastasis, those patients are allowed. Again, in the naratinib arm, the capecitabine dosage was little lower compared to the lapatinib arm, that is 1500 mg, probably to mitigate the important side effect of naratinib. So if you look at the survival outcomes, the PFS was statistically significant with a 2.2 months improvement in median PFS. However, there was no survival advantage. Again, another important point is the requirement of CNS intervention among the patients who are included in this trial. There were lesser requirement of CNS directed therapy like radiation therapy in naratinib arm compared to lapatinib plus capatinib, showing that it is also having activity in the CNS metastasis. So one of the, since it is a pan-HER inhibitor, so off-target toxicities will be as expected or higher. The incidence of diarrhea, all grade diarrhea were 83% and grade 3, grade 4 diarrhea were 24%. And what is important is this is despite using a prophylactic anti-motility agents. In this trial, there was a patients were given prophylactic anti-motility agents. And apart from that, other GI toxicities like nausea and vomiting were more common in the naratinib group. So apart from these two TKS, the pyrotinib is also been approved in China along with capecitabine, and pozatinib is also showing a promising role in later lines of therapy. After trastuzumab in this R2 subset of patients, the newer exciting molecule is definitely trastuzumab deruxtecan. It has a lot many advanced pharmaceutical properties compared to the previous antibody drug conjugate, that is TD1. That is in terms of it has a high drug to antibody ratio. That it is around 8:1, unstable linker payload. What does it mean? It means that it is usually stable in plasma only inside the cell, where lysosomal cathepsin will break down and release the drug. So only inside the cancer cells it will be released. That is tumor selectable cleavable linker, through that it is attached. Another important property in this antibody drug conjugate is the drug which is used is a topoisomerase 1 inhibitor. Usually in metastatic breast cancers, we do not use a topoisomerase 1 inhibitor upfront, whereas in TDM1 it was microtubule inhibitors. Taxanes are also microtubule. So response rates with these therapies may be low because already they have been exposed to such similar class of drugs. So here it is a different class of drugs, so the efficacy should be higher. And another very important effect is bystander killing effect. What is bystander killing effect? Once it is released inside the tumor cell, it has a permeable effect through it. It can permeate through the cell membrane and percolate into the surrounding cells. Even though surrounding cells, if they are not expressing HER2/neu cells, since it is permeating into the surrounding tissues, it will kill the nearby cells also. Since we know that HER2/neu is a heterogeneous disease, the nearby cells may not have a HER2/neu expression. So because of this bystander effect, even those cells may also be killed. So this is another biggest advantage of this newer drug, trastuzumab deruxtecan. So as expected in this Destiny Breast 01 trial, in that initially part 1 was dose finding. Once they found that TDXD, that is 5.4 mg per kg, is the optimal dose. If you look at this infamous waterfall trial, it has shown a very beautiful objective response rate of 60.9%, and literally there are no patients who has progressed on this TDM1. Almost all patients seems to be at least showing some response, if not PR or CR. So very rarely we get to see such a beautiful waterfall plot. And if you look at the PFS, this is to again to say that this is the median number of cycles patient has received was around 6. Despite this, the median progression-free survival is 19.4 months. This is unprecedented outcome in the later lines in HER2 targeted metastatic breast cancer patients. So achieving this large PFS is definitely a very good success for HER2 positive metastatic breast cancer patients. And again, there was a OS of 24 months, 24.6 months. If you look at the common side effects were GI toxicities and hematological toxicities. And I'll come to the important toxicity, ILD. Another important trial among the trastuzumab deruxtecan is the Destiny Breast 03 trial, which was recently been presented in ESMO Congress 2021 in September. It looked at in the second line therapy. The previous trial was later line. In the second line, the standard of care is TDM1. When it was compared with the TDM1, it has shown a huge benefit that median PFS was not reached versus 6.8 months in TDM1. However, in the investigator assessment, it was around median PFS was reaching up to 25 months. And as we see in the curves, it is separating quite early and the curves are widely separated. And again, there is a trend towards OS improvement, but the data is very early to say anything about OS improvement. And again, the waterfall plots are showing, the upper waterfall plot is for TDXD, showing almost benefit across all the patients. And then down one, TDM1, showing objective response rates of around 90%. So if you look at the toxicities, again, the most important toxicities when we talk about TDXD is a lung toxicity, that is development of ILD pneumonitis. One of the important exclusion criteria, if the patient had a upfront ILD, they were excluded. And very important thing is this is a cumulative toxicity. As the number of doses patients get, the toxicity of this ILD increases. For any grade 1 ILD, that is only if there is a radiological appearance of this toxicity, usually we will withhold the drug and we will start on treatment with a 0.5 mg per kg steroids. If the toxicity is grade 2 or more, definitely we should permanently withhold this TDXD drug, as it is a cumulative toxicity. With further dose, it will keep on worsening. So there is a lot of studies to explore how to improve this particular toxicity. Any grade toxicity ranges somewhere between 15 to 20%, but the severe fatal pneumonia happened in around less than 1% of patients. So in 2021, so definitely the first line regimen is Cleopatra, second line still in NCCN 2021 TDM1, but however with the Destiny 03 probably TDXD, that is trastuzumab deruxtecan, may move up. But if the patient has a brain metastasis as depicted in the ESMO guidelines, those who have a brain metastasis, the only trial so far has shown that in a prospectively conducted randomized trial that tucatinib-based combination therapy shown to improve outcomes in patients with a CNS metastasis. And many drugs are coming which may improve, probably may talk about treatment-free remission also in this subgroup like CML patients. The trials which are looking are a combination of TDM1 plus tucatinib, trastuzumab deruxtecan plus tucatinib. So many things to come up in this subgroup. So with this, I conclude my talk. Thank you. If there are any questions, we can discuss.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shiv Shankar. It was a very wonderful lecture. So due to consent of time, I would like to invite our new speaker. The next speaker is Dr. Jyoti Vadva. Dr. Jyoti Vadva is the Director Head and Thoracic Oncology at Medical and Hemato-Oncology at Medanta, Gurgaon. And she is going to speak on redefining treatment landscape in HR positive, HER negative advanced breast cancer with Trixana. Dr. Jyoti Vadva, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. And thank you, organizers, for making me a part of this academic program. Just give me a minute. Are my slides visible, Dr. JB?
Not yet, ma'am.
Oh, give me a minute.
It's okay, ma'am. Now it's visible.
Okay. So let me start. We all know that CDK4/6 inhibitors have led to a paradigm shift in the treatment of patients with metastatic breast cancer who harbor hormone receptor positive and HER negative breast cancer. And we as medical oncologists would agree that we have all experienced improved patient outcomes with the use of these agents. And today I am going to discuss the consistently improved outcomes documented with Crixana or ribociclib. And I'll show you the evidence in its favor. How do I move the, okay. So ribociclib or Crixana is approved for use in patients who are premenopausal and have metastatic breast cancer. And it's approved for use with aromatase inhibitors, with LHRH agonists as initial treatment. It's also approved for the treatment of postmenopausal women, either with fulvestrant as either initial or second line treatment, and also for the treatment of postmenopausal women with an aromatase inhibitor as initial treatment. So Crixana is approved for all these three indications, both in postmenopausal as well as pre and perimenopausal women. In my talk in next 15 minutes, I'll be reviewing the clinical evidence which supports its superior efficacy, also the evidence supporting either improved or maintained quality of life with the use of this CDK4/6 inhibitor. And we'll also see as to what makes it different from other two available CDK4/6 inhibitors. So when we are sitting down to decide and choose the first line treatment for this subset of patients with hormone receptor positive, HER negative, metastatic breast cancer patients, what actually are we aiming for? So there are three aims in our mind. We want our patients to be living longer. That means that we are looking at improved overall survival. We are also aiming to make our patients live better. That means we are looking at either maintained or improved quality of life. And we are also looking at the aim of making them live longer without chemotherapy, because chemotherapy is toxic and can be fatal for some patients. So let's see if ribociclib has stood the test of time or not in terms of meeting these goals. So based on the three phase 3 clinical trials, including more than 2,000 patients, ribociclib has demonstrated superior OS data. It has also documented improvement or preservation of quality of life. And there has been documentation of over 4 years in delay in the median time to the use of chemotherapy in these patients. So ribociclib has stood the test of time and has led to meeting of all these three goals of our treatment. So ribociclib, in fact, has been studied in a diverse patient population. So it has been studied in not only postmenopausal women, but also in pre and perimenopausal women. So in postmenopausal women, we have two trials, two phase 3 trials, namely Mona Lisa 2 and Mona Lisa 3. And for pre and perimenopausal women, we have phase 3 trial, namely Mona Lisa 7. So ribociclib has been used in Mona Lisa 2 as first-line treatment along with letrozole, the comparator arm being placebo along with letrozole. And therein in Mona Lisa 2, it has proved that the combination of letrozole with ribociclib is in fact superior compared to when we use only letrozole. The Mona Lisa 3 trial comprised of postmenopausal women and used ribociclib along with fulvestrant, either as first-line treatment or as second-line treatment. And therein, the efficacy, the improved efficacy of ribociclib in combination with fulvestrant was documented in both these subgroup of patients, both those who received it as initial treatment and also those who received it as second-line treatment. Mona Lisa 7 dealt with pre and perimenopausal women, And herein, the combination of ribociclib was with either an AI or tamoxifen, obviously along with an LHRH agonist, and the comparator arm had only placebo along with the other hormone therapy. So in these varied, diverse patient populations, the ribociclib has demonstrated improvement in the patient outcomes. This, in fact, is the only CDK4/6 inhibitor which has the longest reported overall survival across 3 phase 3 trials. And let's start with MONALEESA-2. So in this trial, the median overall survival of the combination of ribociclib with letrozole was 63.9 months compared to 51.4 months with letrozole alone arm. So look at the two subgroups. The hazard ratio here was 0.76, and the delta, the difference in the median overall survival was 12.5 months. So there was 12.5 months improvement with the addition of ribociclib to letrozole. And there was 24% reduction in the risk of death with the addition of ribociclib to letrozole. The overall survival further was found to increase over time. So the analysis was done at 4 years, 5 years, and most recently at 6 years. And we noticed that as the time from diagnosis or treatment advances, we see greater impact of additional ribociclib, and the delta between the two arms of treatment goes on increasing. It was at 6 years, 12.2% in the two arms. So the benefit is not only maintained, but also enhanced with time. The subsequent treatments. So if we compare in MONALEESA-2, the two arms, two treatment arms, we notice that the patients in the ribociclib with letrozole arm, 23% of these got subsequently CDK4/6 inhibitor, whereas a higher proportion of patients, namely 37% in the letrozole alone arm, received a CDK4/6 inhibitor subsequently. But despite this difference in the proportion of patients receiving CDK4/6 inhibitors subsequently, ribociclib still showed statistically significant improvement in overall survival. So this goes on to show that it makes most sense to use it as first-line treatment rather than subsequent line treatment. So offer the best in the first-line treatment. There was also delay in time to chemotherapy and also preserved quality of life in MONALEESA-2. So time to chemotherapy got delayed by over 4 years with the use of ribociclib in addition to letrozole. The median time to chemotherapy onset was 50.6 months in the combination arm, and it was 38.9 months in the letrozole alone arm. So there was 11.7 months delay in the time to chemotherapy onset with the addition of ribociclib. The median PFS was 25 months with the combination of ribociclib and letrozole compared to only 16 months with letrozole with placebo. And you also notice, if you look at the curves, that there was a rapid separation in the PFS curves also as early as 8 weeks. The response at 8 weeks clearly shows a difference here. And if you look at the reduction in tumor size, or 3 out of 4 patients saw a reduction in their tumor size as early as 8 weeks on treatment with ribociclib and letrozole. So we conclude here that ribociclib did show superiority on the basis of MONALEESA-2 in terms of PFS improvement, significant overall survival improvement with maintained quality of life. And what more do we ask for in treatment of such patients? Subsequently, this is the only CDK4/6 inhibitor that has shown superior OS and quality of life values across 2 more phase 3 trials, which dealt with postmenopausal women in its combination with fulvestrant, and also in premenopausal women in MONALEESA-7. So this is the only CDK4/6 inhibitor that has received ESMO magnitude of clinical benefit scorecard score of 5, in fact. A score of 4 or 5 is said to be a proof of clinical benefit of a new agent. And Crixana or ribociclib does remain the only CDK4/6 inhibitor to achieve this score of 4 in the first-line postmenopausal women with hormone receptor positive, HER negative metastatic breast cancer. This in MONALEESA-3, which is another phase 3 trial, demonstrated improvement in the overall survival in postmenopausal women when used in combination with fulvestrant. So herein the slide shows the overall survival. The median OS was 53.7 months with the combination of fulvestrant with ribociclib compared to 41.5 months with fulvestrant alone. And this is at median follow-up of 56 months, wherein we see a nearly 4.5 year median OS improvement. And this is the longest reported median OS in postmenopausal hormone receptor positive, HER negative metastatic breast cancer patients. And the MONALEESA-3 is in fact the only randomized trial evaluating a CDK4/6 inhibitor to demonstrate OS benefit in this subset of patients when used in first-line setting. There was 36% reduction in the risk of death with the combination of ribociclib with fulvestrant. In subset of patients who harbor liver metastasis, the median OS was improved even further to the tune of 36 months with the combination compared to 24 months with the use of only fulvestrant. There was a 37% reduction in the risk of death at median follow-up of 39 months. And in MONALEESA-3, just to bring to your attention that 27% of patients did have liver metastasis in this trial. Further, again, time to chemotherapy, use of chemotherapy was delayed by 4 years. The median time to chemotherapy use was 48 months with the combination of ribociclib with fulvestrant compared to only 28.8 months with fulvestrant alone. So there was a 1.5 year delay in median time to use of chemotherapy, which is impressive. So patients during this period were spared of the side effects of chemotherapy. Quality of life, again, preserved. There was a delay in deterioration in the functioning scores and the side effects such as fatigue, diarrhea, pain, and MSS were slightly improved, in fact, or maintained when compared to baseline while on treatment with ribociclib. The pain scores also were significantly improved, and as early as 8 weeks, the patients reported subjective improvement. Again, the reduction in tumor size documented as early as 8 weeks, as we saw in MONALEESA-2. In MONALEESA-3 also, 2 out of 3 patients, that means 68% patients, did experience a reduction in tumor size as early as 8 weeks. So it's not that these CDK4/6 inhibitors bring out delay in response to treatment, or there's no, in fact, there have been studies which say that they may be useful even when we so-called presume visceral crisis. So there's no need to panic. And these agents are quite effective in terms of rapidity of response as well. And overall survival benefit was in fact observed with the combination of ribociclib with the other agent across all subgroups, including the line of treatment, initial or second line treatment, and also as per the disease burden. So it's to the left of unity in almost all the subgroups. So coming to the third phase 3 trial, that's MONALEESA-7. Herein, the ribociclib has demonstrated superior overall survival and quality of life for pre- and perimenopausal women with hormone receptor positive, HER negative metastatic breast cancer. And we know that this subset of patients who are premenopausal, they in fact have very distinct clinical, physical, and emotional needs. And they are diagnosed at a young age, and they run a much higher, significantly higher risk of relapse and death. And we know that amongst these patients, the risk of death may be up to 2 times greater at young age. So they have greater severity of symptoms and greater impairment of quality of life also. So herein it's all the more important to choose wisely the treatments that we offer to premenopausal women. So in Mona Lisa 7, this is the longest median OS ever reported with a CDK4/6 inhibitor. Median follow-up of 54 months, median OS of 58.7 months with combination of ribociclib with an AI or tamoxifen versus only 48 months with an AI or tamoxifen. So this is a significant improvement, as you would all agree. The patients with liver metastasis again. So again in Mona Lisa 7, as we saw in Mona Lisa 3, 25% of patients did have liver mets, and they had 47% reduction in the risk of death with the use of combination of ribociclib with an AI or tamoxifen. Time to chemotherapy again got delayed by over 4 years. Median time to chemotherapy use was 51 months with ribociclib's addition to an AI or tamoxifen versus just 36 months with an AI or tamoxifen. So 30% reduction there in the risk of progression to chemotherapy in these patients. So again, leading to an improvement in quality of life with the time to deterioration being 34 months with ribociclib and AI compared to just 23 months. So earlier time to deterioration, clinical deterioration with the use of an AI alone versus the use of combination of ribociclib with an AI. So that's another feature favoring the use of ribociclib. Again, reduction in tumor size documented in 72% of patients with measurable disease as early as 8 weeks from the onset of treatment. So again, another trial documenting the utility of the combination of ribociclib with the hormonal agent. And again, all the exploratory subgroups showing a benefit there with the addition of ribociclib to the hormonal agent. So to summarize, we have seen based on these 3 clinical trials, all phase 3 clinical trials, namely Mona Lisa 2, 3, and 7, that ribociclib does result in superior overall survival and improved or at least maintained quality of life for not only post-menopausal women with hormone receptor HER negative metastatic breast cancer, but also in pre and perimenopausal women. They lived not only longer, but they lived well, and they lived longer without the use of chemotherapy. That's the beauty of these agents. And nearly 4.5 years of median overall survival benefit in both first line and second line treatment of patients with the use of combination of ribociclib and fulvestrant in postmenopausal women. And more than half of first line postmenopausal women were still alive at 5 years when they received ribociclib with fulvestrant, and nearly 5 years median OS in first line premenopausal women with the use of ribociclib with an AI. So a beautiful agent showing a superior efficacy in the treatment of metastatic breast cancer patients who have hormone receptor positive HER negative disease. So I'll end my talk here, and I hand over back to the organizers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Jyoti. Thank you. Wonderful talk regarding that use of ribociclib in the metastatic breast cancer. And it has shown benefit in the premenopausal, perimenopausal, postmenopausal, along with letrozole, as well as along with the fulvestrant. So this is the maximum, the longest median progression-free survival achieved with this ribociclib. So if there are quick questions we can take, if there are any, Dr. Uppal. Okay, okay. If there are no, thank you, Dr. Jyoti. Thank you very much.
Dr.
Thank
Ji.
you.
Thank you.
So, Ravinder, next, our
Uh,
next speaker will.
Dr. JB.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
Dr. Uppal. Yes, I
yeah.
was expecting.
Yeah. Which one is more preferred, like in premenopausal ladies, whether tamoxifen or anastrozole with the LHR agonist? Which one you prefer? Like, what is the data on that?
Okay. Dr. Jyoti?
So we are all aware of the trials, and depending on patient characteristics, one could choose either an AI or tamoxifen. So that was premenopausal women. Clearly, premenopausal, you would tend to prefer tamoxifen for some time at least with LHRH agonist, and you could also use AI. So both are right. There's depending on the cardiac risk factors or the bone mineral density, some other similar features, one could choose one over the other.
And in both these situations, you have to give LHRH agonist.
Yeah, for that's we are talking here in about pre or perimenopausal women.
Yeah.
So we really have to use the LHRH agonist always.
If the patient has progressed on adjuvant tamoxifen, do you use letrozole with this CDK4 inhibitor, or you go for fulvestrant?
No, one could use an AI.
Yeah.
Could use.
Okay.
Pankaj, we can use, because earlier also our patients who progressed on tamoxifen, they were treated with AI as a second line agent. So
Yeah,
here
okay.
also you can use letrozole along with the CDK4 inhibitors.
Okay.
So thank you, Dr. Jyoti. Thank you very much for your excellent presentation. Now we will be moving to the next speaker. Dr. Samir Khatri is the Director and HOD Medical Oncology of Shanti Mukund Hospital. And he will be speaking on the PI King, the right strategy to deal with the hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative advanced breast cancer when the patient developed resistant to ribociclib and hormonal treatment. Dr. Samir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So today I will be talking about this concept of PIK3 kinase mutation and how we can target this pathway and get good results for our patients who have progressed or have developed resistance to the hormonal therapy. So can you share my slides?
Ravinder, slides, please.
Yeah, thank you. So picking the right strategy for these kind of patients of hormone receptor positive or HER2 negative who have this mutation in phosphatidylinositol 3 catalyst alpha mutation, so commonly called the PIK3CA mutation. So next slide. So why this pathway is important? This PIK3CA, it is the most common mutated gene in HR positive, HER2 negative advanced breast cancer, with as high as 40% of the patients in this category having this mutation. And what is important to remember is that these mutations, these patients who have this mutation have a worse prognosis. Next slide. So as is evident from these two studies, that genomic analysis of 649 metastatic breast cancer patient and a meta-analysis of about 1900 cases of patients of breast cancer. So both of these studies showed that the presence of this mutation has a negative prognostic factor, and it is associated with poor response to therapy, and it has a worse overall prognosis. So PIK3 mutation, this catching this thing and doing this mutation analysis, this can be taken as a biomarker for response to treatment and prediction of prognosis in breast cancer, advanced breast cancer patients. Next slide. So knowing your patient's PIK3 mutation status, this may help in developing the upfront treatment strategy strategies. As we know that this pathway, it has been associated with endocrine resistance and disease progression associated with the poor prognosis. So this mutation, this leads to more cell proliferation, tumorigenesis, leading on to poor prognosis and endocrine resistance. So knowing this patient's mutation status may inform the upfront treatment strategies and response to the therapy. Next slide. So this drug, alpelisib, the Pluvicto, this specifically addresses this mutation. So it inhibits this mutation, and this mutation leads to hyperactivation of this pathway, the phosphatidylcholine kinase alpha pathway. And this drug specifically acts 50 times more on this alpha isomer as compared to beta, gamma, or delta isomer. So this inhibition, this targeting PIK3 mutation may overcome the resistance which is there by the endocrine therapy, previous endocrine therapy, and this can be overcome. And beautifully, it has a synergistic effect along with the when it is given with fulvestrant. Next slide. So this is the SOLAR-1 study, the first phase 3 study which got the approval for this drug. So if you see, this is the advanced breast cancer, more than 18 years, HER2 negative, HR positive patient who had recurred or progressed of breast cancer during or after endocrine therapy. They were randomized 1:1 to the standard doses of Pluvicto of 300 milligram daily, and along with fulvestrant compared with placebo and fulvestrant. Primary endpoint was PFS, secondary was OS and other. Next slide. So if we see, there is a more than 2 times progression-free survival benefit in this combination arm of Pluvicto and fulvestrant, with the median progression-free survival of 11 months versus 5.7 months. So this combination is a category 1 option in by the NCCN practice guidelines for breast cancer in these kind of patients who have this mutation. Next slide. And this PFS results were evident in all subgroup of patients. This was, as we can see, it was consistent results with across all the subgroups. Next slide. And there was more than double the response rates in those who had the measurable disease, and those overall response rate in those who have the mutation, the response rate was 26.6 months. So better response rate in the tune of more than 2 times was there with the combination of Pluvicto and fulvestrant. Next slide. And again, if you see 3 out of 4 patients who had taken this drug, Pluvicto along with fulvestrant, they had a response rate measurable disease. So there was deeper responses in this combination arm with 76% nearly responding. Next slide. And if we talk about the dosage, so dosage is a standard. This it is available as a 150 milligram tablets. We have to take the patient has to take 2 tablets, and it has to be taken daily with food, and it should be swallowed whole and taken with food at approximately the same time each day. And recommended dose of fulvestrant we all know. If we talk about the drug reduction, first we start with 300 milligrams. The drug reduction is required for side effects, which we will be discussing. So the first dose reduction is 250 milligram, and subsequent is the 200 milligram. Next slide. And these are the side effects. So this combination comes with a few side effects, though they are manageable, and we will be discussing about how to manage the side effect. So the most important side effect, nearly 40% of our patients, they develop hyperglycemia, and approximately 20% will develop some form of rash. So I will be discussing how to give prophylactic treatment for rashes and how to manage the hyperglycemia. Next slide. So why exactly this hyperglycemia happens? This normally this pathway, the PI3 kinase pathway, it drives glucose uptake into the cell. But when we inhibit this pathway by this giving Pluvicto, so it blocks this glucose uptake, leading on to hyperglycemia. Next slide. So these are the dose modification and management in patients who develop hyperglycemia. So importantly, when the fasting sugar levels, we have to take the fasting sugar level. It is about 160. Then no the dose adjustments are required. But between 160 and 250, no dose reduction is required. But about 250 to 500, we should omit alpelisib. And then when the fasting sugar levels they resolve to grade 1 within 3 to 5 days, then we can restart the drug. So anti-diabetic therapy, that strictly we should manage with giving the metformin or the things. So initiate metformin at a dose of 500 milligram once a day, and this can be increased to twice a day. And similarly, the dosage has to be increased depending on the sugar levels. So if the fasting sugar level is more than 500, in spite of all this, then omit alpelisib, and in 24 hours, if the grade improves, then allow specific grade recommendation. Otherwise, if the fasting glucose levels is confirmed still at grade 4, in the absence of confounding factors, then permanently discontinue the patient and consult the endocrinologist for the management of hyperglycemia. Next slide. So along with the drug therapy, most important is the lifestyle and dietary modifications to manage the hyperglycemia. Next slide. And the only laboratory monitoring is needed for patients that is the fasting blood glucose levels. These are the recommendation. When we start prior to initiating Pluvicto, it should be done, and then after first 2 weeks, once a week, and then after 2 weeks, at least once every 4 weeks, it is recommended. And HbA1c, again, it should be done at the starting of Pluvicto tablets, and then every 3 months, and as and when clinically indicated. Next slide. So another very important thing, about 20% of the patients, they develop rash, and how to manage this rash, not very difficult. And if we give prophylactic antihistamine, then the incidence of rash also decreases, as is evident in this study, that if you see that those patients who had taken prophylactic antihistamine, so no rash was there in about 73% of patients as compared to 36%. And grade 1 or 2 rash developed in about 15% of patients, and grade 3 and 4 in about 12%, as compared to 41% grade 1, 2 when no treatment was given, and 23% grade 3, 4 rash if no treatment for antihistamine was given. Next slide. So this mutation testing, it is a critical component of HER2 negative HR positive patients and in the advanced breast cancer management. So why to test? I have already told you what is the importance of testing, because they have developed resistance to the hormonal therapy, and if they have this mutation, so this carries a very worse prognosis, and they are eligible for this drug alpelisib. So when to test? This is another very important aspect. When to test these patients? So to test PIK3 kinase mutation when a patient presents with metastasis from breast cancer, and these mutations are generally stable. So the FDA has approved these, how to test this thing. These are the two, either we can do the NGS testing or Thera screening, and for this sample can be tissue and liquid. And TheraScreen RGQ kits are now readily available in India for testing. And this mutation occurs in 2 exons, this exon 9 and exon 20. In fact, 80% of the patients, they have in 3 regions like E542, E545 in exon 9, and in H1047 in exon 20. So these can be tested by either TheraScan or NGS testing. Next slide. So this combination of alpelisib and fulvestrant is a category 1 preferred option in NCCN critical care, NCCN guidelines for advanced breast cancer. And PIK3 kinase mutation analysis, it has to be done in those patients who have advanced metastatic breast cancer, those tumors are HR positive, HER2 negative, and those who are then considered for alpelisib. So if the tissue biopsy shows positive PIK3 kinase mutation, then the combination of Pluvicto along with fulvestrant should be started. And if liquid biopsy shows positive, then also we have to start. But if the liquid biopsy is showing a negative mutation, then tumor tissue should be obtained and this mutation analysis should be done. Next slide. So to summarize, this mutation of PIK3 kinase, this is present in about 40% of HR positive, HER2 negative advanced breast cancer patient, and this indicates a very poor prognosis. And alpelisib tablet specifically targets this mutation, and use of this drug nearly doubles the median PFS in patients with this mutation, with a median PFS of about 11 months. And it also doubles, this combination also doubles the response rate among patients with this mutation who had a measurable disease, with an overall response rate of about 35.7% versus 16.2%. So regarding the safety, there are adverse events like rash and hyperglycemia, but they are well managed and reversible. So alpelisib is a biomarker-driven therapy with NCCN category 1 evidence for HR positive, HER2 negative advanced breast cancer patient who have this mutation of PI3 kinase. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr.
Dr. Samir, thank you very much for the excellent presentation. And thank you. If we have any question, I think we are running late, so we can directly proceed to the panel discussion. Thank you very much. So panel discussion, we have Congress to consensus, and this will be Indian paradigm of HER2, hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative ABC. So this panel will be moderated by Dr. Sumit Goyal, who is a senior consultant, Department of Medical Oncology at Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Institute and Research Center. So, Dr. Sumit.
Thank you very much, sir. I would like to thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity and the organizers. So good evening,
so
everyone.
We have in the panel, we have Dr. Pankaj Goyal, who is consultant at Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Hospital. We have Dr. Varun Goyal, who is also consultant at Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Hospital. We have Dr. Manoj Sharma, who is senior consultant at Action Cancer Hospital or Radiotherapy Department. And Dr. Srujana Jogas, consultant in Medical Oncology, Homi Bhabha Cancer Hospital and Research Center. Dr. Krishna Chaudhary is at CHL Hospital Indore, and Dr. Venkat Pradeep at Homi Bhabha Cancer Hospital and Research Center. So welcome all, and I think Dr. Sumit, you can proceed with the panel discussion.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir. I welcome all the esteemed panelists. They are more learned than me. And I have full belief. So I can see Dr. Varun traveling back, and Dr. Pankaj is there as always, smiling. The mischievous smile is there.
Your voice is slightly lower side, so I think you have to come near to the mic, or you can use the headphones.
Is it okay now, sir?
Slightly better.
Okay, I'll increase the tone of my voice.
Yes,
and,
yes.
I think without much ado, can we start, sir?
No,
So
this is not
Dr.
good
Samir
now.
is not there, sir. Dr. Gopal and Dr. Samir.
Dr. Samir is still there. He's
Okay.
in the panel discussion.
Let's
Dr.
start
Samir,
with-
you stay with the panel discussion.
So, welcome all. Let's start without wasting much time. So we all know this is for CDK4/6 inhibitors. So we will be briefly talking about goals of treatment in advanced breast cancer, the data in first-line metastatic setting in post-menopausal women, the CDK inhibitors, their efficacy in first and second line. Just briefly, we will be touching and we will be taking on the pertinent points and conclusions and future directions. So if we talk about the first thing, so what comes to our mind when we talk about metastatic breast cancer, if all the options are available to us, what will going to be your choice? May I ask, let's start with Dr. Pankaj. Pankaj?
Sir, I think it's quite clear that we are using these aromatase inhibitors and CDK4/6 inhibitors to start with in all the first line patients, unless there is a specific contraindication. Possibly patient is in frank visceral crisis. Otherwise, even if now we are having a data and with the experience, even if it's an early visceral crisis, we tend to have a confidence that this combination would work well.
Okay, so that is very good and very apt reply. So any differences of opinion, Dr. Venkat, Dr. Krishna, Dr. Srajna?
No, sir, I'm of the same opinion.
Okay, Dr. Varun?
No, sir, same as Pankaj have told. Like I'm in
So
same
we
opinion.
all agree that if visceral crisis is not there, our preferred choice will be aromatase inhibitor plus minus CDK4/6 inhibitor. So at this point of time, so if we know the Pankaj that you asked this question, whether the choice will change if the endocrine resistance is there. So are we comfortable using CDK4/6 inhibitor combination along with aromatase inhibitor or fulvestrant if endocrine resistance is there?
Sir, I think as per the study also, we can comfortably use aromatase inhibitor plus CDK4/6 inhibitor. But then, though there's no data, we can test for the mutation and choose to go on fulvestrant. But that's not the standard of care yet, I think.
Correct, right. So may I ask Dr. Samir? Dr. Samir? I think he's not there. So Dr. Varun, so your take on this? Dr. Krishna, I can see you. So hello. Your
So,
take on
sir,
this?
yes, sir. Means I will see whether the resistance is primary or secondary. If it is a adjuvant therapy, if it is a primary resistant kind of resistance, then I would think and go for chemotherapy first to reduce the burden of disease and then put on maintenance hormone. And if it is a kind of secondary resistance, then fulvestrant with aromatase inhibitor. That will be my choice.
Okay. So Dr. Venkat, the Krishna said that if primary endocrine resistance is there, he may not, he would prefer to use chemotherapy as the next line. So what are your thoughts on that?
In the trials of aromatase inhibitor plus CDK4/6 inhibitor, both the populations are included. Although there is no real clear-cut evaluation of primary versus secondary resistance in the trials and mentioned as a subset analysis. But definitely, I think if it is strong hormone Pol2 and HER2, still it is a combination is the way to go with, as far as my opinion is concerned.
I agree with both of you. If the volume of disease is very high, maybe chemotherapy first. If the visceral crisis and volume of disease is not high, but all these studies like MONALEESA 3, MONARCH 2, MONARCH 1, and PALOMA 3, they had patients who had progressed on endocrine therapy and CDK4/6 inhibitors were added later. So we agree. The answer is okay. So when we treat, so what are our objectives? What do we look at? We look at OS, PFS, tolerability, quality of life. So Dr. Srajna.
Yes, sir.
So what do you want to choose?
So I would choose the OS and the quality of life, sir, because these are the true endpoints.
Why not all of all?
Those are all surrogate points, sir, but preferably OS data, whichever shows overall survival benefit first, I would choose that.
Very right. So ultimately, we are looking at overall survival. So anything which gives us good overall survival with good quality of life and tolerability, we will choose that agent over the others. So this is what it is. All of you said rightly. The key goal in the treatment is to prolong survival and to restrict toxicity as much as possible. And PFS is a surrogate marker basically, and quality of life is important. So combining the targeting therapies, we all know that about 50%, 70% of patients are hormone receptor positive. And of all the patients who are started on hormonal therapies, 50% of them will develop resistance to the hormonal therapies at some point of time. So we need to have additional drugs in our armamentarium so to fight those. So we have varied drugs of which Dr. Sameer also talked, TYK3 inhibitors, then we have mTOR inhibitors, then we have other agents which are coming up. But CDK4/6 inhibitors, they form a big and the important role to play they have. So CDK4/6, we all know where do they work, how do they work, and what is their mechanism of action. So moving on, so coming to the first question. So if we look at the OS, as Srijna said, she is looking at OS benefit. So what all studies we know have shown OS benefit in the postmenopausal women in the first line setting. Dr. Varun, your thoughts on that?
Sir, so out of the 3 drugs available, like this ribociclib trials, Mona Lisa 2 and 3 and 7, those 3 trials have shown overall survival benefit. And as Srijna have told that our ultimate goal will be overall survival benefit. Like although first we should see whether drug is tolerable or not, side effect profile, and then PFS and then OS. But still, so out of all, Mona Lisa 2 and 5 and 7 are the one who have shown overall survival benefit.
Dr. Venkat, do you agree?
Mona Lisa and Monarch both have also has shown the survival benefit. So Rebo and Abema.
So Monarch 2, I think Monarch 2, not 3. So Dr. Pankaj?
Sir, I agree with Dr. Varun, whatever he has said, he has summarized everything. So
Yeah.
overall survival data is what we prefer, which has been demonstrated in Mona Lisa 2.
Okay, Mona Lisa 2, correct. So any differences of opinion among others? I think we all agree that it is Mona Lisa 2 and Monarch 2 which showed the benefit. So if we look at the PFS, all 3 studies had shown there was hazard ratio was in favor of all the CDK4/6 inhibitors. They had all shown benefit in terms of PFS, and combination, the responses were higher. The PFS was 24.8 versus almost double, but it was the OS benefit was there in the ribociclib group in the Monas. The improvement in median OS was 12.5 months with ribociclib plus letrozole. And here we can see clearly it was 51.4 months versus 63.9 with a significant p-value and the hazard ratio being 0.76. So that's what everyone said. So we also know that the OS benefit with ribociclib has increased over time. At 6 years, the survival of patients receiving ribociclib was 44.2%. And every time the interim analysis has shown subsequently 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, the delta has increased, proving that the benefit is there, it stays there, and it gets better with time. So it was also consistent across all the key subgroups, whether there was visceral metastasis or bony metastasis, ECOG performance status, and prior chemotherapy, whether the patients have received the prior chemotherapy, whether the patients have received prior endocrine therapy, the sites and number of metastasis, de novo versus on progression. So the benefit was consistent across all the, and additionally, there was no safety signals, even after more than 6.5 years of follow. So coming to the next question, does menopausal status affect the treatment selection in your practice? So starting with you, Dr. Venkat.
Yes, sir. So in some of the trials, only premenopausal women were included, like in this trial. But in other trials, later on we have in Monarch, in the ribociclib trials, both premenopausal, postmenopausal patients were included. So definitely, while choosing, we'll take that point into consideration.
Okay. So Dr. Srijna.
Yes, sir, I agree with Venkat, sir, that in pre and perimenopausal patients, we have the data with ribociclib. So preferably that would be the choice in those patients. Whereas in postmenopausal, we have all the 3 options.
So Dr. Pankaj, your thoughts? So
Sir, I think with the data which has been presented today, I think it becomes a preferred choice in premenopausal as well as postmenopausal. Previously, it was just premenopausal where they had upper edge, but now I think the overall survival has, suggests that probably it can be used across.
Okay. So you would prefer fulvestrant over AI plus LHRH if it is premenopausal?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is the same thing this is in premenopausal women, which trials have shown OS benefit in first line in advanced breast cancer in premenopausal women. So
That is 7.
thing you can see all. So Krishna, your thoughts?
Sir, I agree with Sujana and Venkat sir and Pankaj Goyal
The
sir.
next question.
Mona
Yes,
Lisa
sir.
7, sir, what he's saying.
Yeah,
Mona
this
Lisa
is
7.
Mona Lisa 7 in premenopausal women, which has shown benefit. All of us, we agree?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is Mona Lisa 7, which basically has shown in premenopausal group. It included not only fulvestrant, but endocrine therapy plus LHRH or agonist or antagonist also. And it has shown benefit, OS benefit was there in the combination group, 58.7 months versus 48 months, and hazard ratio being 0.763. So there was crossover from the placebo group to the experimental line. Even then, the benefit was there, the OS benefit was there despite the crossover. So which CDK inhibitors have established OS benefit with fulvestrant for hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative advanced breast cancer? So fulvestrant with all these agents. So Palbo, Ribo, Abema, all none. Pankaj, Dr. Pankaj.
Hello, sir.
Pankaj. So fulvestrant.
I think it's again actually ribociclib which has shown in one of this trial, Mona Lisa 3. That it still has OS benefit even if you use it with fulvestrant.
Okay. Okay, correct. Dr. Venkat, you were saying something about Monarch.
Sir, sorry, sir.
Abemaciclib.
Yes, sir. So, I'm not sure, sir, but Palbo plus fulvestrant also has OS benefit. Along with ribociclib plus fulvestrant also.
Okay. Okay. So let's see the data. What is there? So fulvestrant plus CDK inhibitors. So we have 3 studies: Paloma 3, Monarch 3, Mona Lisa 3. Paloma 3 is palbociclib plus fulvestrant. Monarch 2 is with abemaciclib with fulvestrant, and Mona Lisa 3 is with ribociclib and this thing. So we see the hazard ratio has increased in all. There is better. That delta is there. The difference is there with all 3 drugs. And the benefit is there when the drugs were used in the earlier lines. But coming to the OS, whether OS was there or not, so we can see here, this is what, if the endocrine resistance is there, even then we can use, it included the patients who had relapsed on neoadjuvant or within 1 year of adjuvant endocrine therapy, these therapies are included. So this is, we can all go through data. So if we look at the updates, so OS update of Paloma 3, the absolute improvement in median OS was there, but it was not statistically significant. And it was at the follow-up 73.3 months. Other thing is in the Monarch 2, yes, advantage was there. Abema plus fulvestrant, what Venkat was referring to, and hazard ratio was 0.757. There was benefit of 9.4 months, and p-value was significant here also. And Mona Lisa 3, definitely it has shown even up to extended follow-up 56.3 months, the benefit is there, which is consistent even in the first line setting. In the second line setting, it is maintaining the hazard ratio difference and showing the benefit in all 3 lines when combined with fulvestrant. So coming to the crux question, are all 3 CDK4/6 inhibitors same? So here I would like to ask Dr. Pankaj, you have the highest experience of using the CDK4/6 inhibitors. So how do you choose? Is there
Sir, I think there is a difference if you see the efficacy or their selectivity towards the CDK4/6 inhibitors. There's vast difference, and as is the difference between the side effect profile, especially so. And with this coming data, I think the efficacy also is different. Some molecules are showing OS, some are not showing OS. And along with that, I think most important will be the side effect profile. As we know that abemaciclib main problem with is the side effect profile. Like cyclin, the palbociclib will be having more of neutropenias, ribociclib more be having increase in SGLT. So they are not same. Initially, we used to think Janta Singh, Banta Singh, but now I think things are becoming clear that they are different.
Okay. So here, Dr. Manoj, sorry, I have not forgotten you. I was waiting for you. So Dr. Manoj, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there. I am enriching myself with the newer things via this lecture. So I have a simple question about that. If does these all CDK4/6 inhibitor work if a patient has the brain metastasis?
That's what I am coming to. That's why I remembered you. So next question
Okay.
is to you. So in lung
Okay.
cancers, if the, like what we see is what we are doing. If the patient is having any tyrus driver mutation is there and patient is asymptomatic, we tend to wait while giving radiation. So here now with availability of like abemaciclib, which you only said. So what will be your thoughts if the patient is asymptomatic and having brain mets and is on CDK4/6 inhibitors? And what if the patient is symptomatic? Symptomatic, we all know that obviously we will proceed with the radiation first, but your thoughts, input, if the patient is asymptomatic, what will be your advice to us?
But what I can say that if we are giving radiation first, definitely it will disturb the blood-brain barrier. That means if it disturbs the blood-brain barrier, then I think that these drugs will work better. So my point of view is that if it is again, if we say if the lesion is more than 3 centimeter, single lesion is there, we should go for radiation. Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even if the patient is asymptomatic.
Yes.
So what
because
about the
I
long-
don't know the data of CDK4/6 inhibitors in the brain metastasis, but
It's okay.
as we have the data in the CL lung.
Okay, yes. We don't have, but it is shown that the abemaciclib has a better blood-brain barrier penetrability.
Okay, then that might be a small lesion is there, you can omit, but if it's more than 3 centimeter, in my point of view, we should go for at least SRS or SRT.
Something
So
should be done.
just
Sir,
one
in
question.
all these trials, they have taken the patient who have been managed for brain metastasis, like who have been stable. So we are really not sure whether we can really rely on their efficacy if we are not treating the patient with brain mets.
Yes.
Okay.
And second thing is, what about like the lung cancer patients? We know the longevity is increasing, but in breast cancer patient, definitely the longevity is much longer as compared to other subsets of disease, especially patients who are hormone receptor positive. So in this patient, so what about the long-term side effects of radiation? So do we use, like you already said, KSR is a better modality, like a limited number of meds are there. And any other techniques that you are using, sir? Dr.
Yes, if it is a multiple metastasis, brain metastasis, then we can go for para-hippocampal sparing with radiation with IMRT.
Okay.
That's why, and that definitely the what we are concerned with, the more of the cognitive functions that we can spare very well.
Okay.
So the side effects is less, and the patient tolerates better. And in my experience, I have seen that if multiple small metastases are there with radiation, it vanished. Means within 2 or 3 months, 2 or 3 months is definitely completely gone. So sometimes I feel radiation works much better way in the brain metastasis also.
So okay, sir.
So if we are going for the whole brain, definitely we should go for the para-hippocampal sparing whole brain radiation therapy, and with a single 1 or 2, we should go for SRS or SRT.
Okay. So Dr. Srijna, what are any thoughts? What are your thoughts on this? All inhibitors the same?
No, sir, side effect profile differs.
That Dr. Pankaj already highlighted. So anything else that you want to add? I think more or less it is the same. But only thing is the dosing schedules and the hepatic impairment and the CYP3A4. the selective toxicity, like the QTC prolongation is there with the ribociclib, which is not there. And I still remember someone had come to ITCA, and the way we said we had given tamoxifen to ribociclib, she was like, lied, I don't know, at that time it was long back. So we need to be careful. We need to look at QTC intervals if we are using this thing, and we need to monitor. And Dr. Venkat, your thoughts?
So I haven't personally used abemaciclib. Definitely, I do not have experience of managing like in lung cancer. So I'll agree with the panel.
So Dr. Varun, quickly coming to you, last 2-3 questions. So any selective like bone only meds, whether your choice of CDK4/6 inhibitor will change or it will be?
No, sir. It's not any difference. Like our experience is with we most of our experience is with the ribociclib, so it's not depending on site of meds or and number of meds.
Okay. So Dr. Krishna.
Yes, sir. I will see the. Sir, means honestly, I have used palbociclib more than both of the two. And with palbociclib, they recommend ECG monitoring, which thing is not there with palbociclib and abemaciclib I have not used. But the side effect profile was abemaciclib will cause more diarrhea, palbociclib will cause more neutropenia. So that will be the difference. Otherwise, the efficacy remains the same. Hazard ratios are more or less the same in other trials.
Yeah, agree. Yeah. So all the 3 agents basically they have worked in visceral metastasis, but somehow the efficacy of bone only metastasis probably palbociclib. Otherwise, the abema and the ribo they are better choices for using in visceral metastasis. They have shown like in all the subsets they have shown OS advantage also. So other thing is, what after CDK4/6 inhibitors that Dr. Sameer Khatri had covered in his brief lecture. So we have option of mTOR inhibitors. We have PIK3 inhibitors if the mutation is there, so difficult to manage drug. Then we have chemotherapeutic options, and so this will skip. So summarizing here, so all the panelists will agree the CDK4/6 inhibitors plus endocrine therapy is standard of care for most patients with advanced HR positive, HER2 negative breast cancer. It has shown consistent PFS benefit in major randomized trials today, and consistent OS benefit with ribociclib in postmenopausal and premenopausal patients are there in all the Mona Lisa studies. And future directions, definitely we need to watch and see. And the next couple of years and newer studies again is going to challenge us to do the sequencing correctly, especially the role of these inhibitors coming in the neoadjuvant and the adjuvant setting. So just a hypothetical question to Dr. Varun and Dr. Pankaj. So suppose, are we using these medicines and started using them in adjuvant setting yet?
No, sir. Till now, in adjuvant setting, I haven't given.
Not yet, sir. Not yet.
Not yet, because that will change the whole lot scenario. If we have used them in the adjuvant setting, what after that? Whether we can still use them in the metastatic setting later on. So that we all need to see and discuss. So if anything else is there from any of the panelists, if anyone wants to highlight something. No, I thank my panelists, Dr. Pankaj, Dr. Varun, Dr. Manoj, Dr. Krishna, Dr. Venkat. Thank you all. Thank you for being there. And I hand over back to you, sir, Dr. J.B. Sharma.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sumit, for conducting very effectively this panel discussion on the CDK4 inhibitors and the endocrine treatment in advanced HER2 positive, hormone receptor positive HER2 negative breast cancer. Thank you very much. And from the core of my heart, I thanks all the speakers, Dr. Shiv Shankar, Dr. Jyoti Wadhwa, Dr. Sameer Khatri, and all the panelists, Dr. Pankaj, Dr. Varun, Dr. Manoj Sharma, Dr. Sajana Joga, Dr. Krusha Chaudhary, and Dr. Venkat Babu. Thank you all the panelists, and thank you all the participants, and thank you the conference organizers, Mighty Duo, Ravinder Purohit, which has conducted the conference without any glitches and without any problem. There was not a connectivity issue and none of other problems associated with the online platform. And he has used the online platform very effectively with Zoom, and everything was well organized and well prepared and well timed. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.